Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So let me begin where I left off yesterday. I don't know if you were here yesterday, but it doesn't matter. It'll be self-contained. So the title they gave for this class really is an extent. It's called The 21st Century Jew. Yesterday it was about making positive changes, age-old wisdom for the 21st century, something like that. So, but since we were a more intimate group, I spoke a little more personally, and but I want to begin with something very fundamental, which I think can explain many things. You know, history. Though I didn't like history when I was in school, but that's no surprise. I didn't like many subjects, as I mentioned. But I will say this: I appreciate now, if you really want to understand the present time, in any situation, in any particular century or decade or lifetime, it's critical to understand the context. Because who we are today is a result of what was here yesterday. When I say yesterday, I mean even centuries ago. And you really cannot understand life unless you have that panorama, perspective. It even helps us understand the future better. Not that we can predict the exact future, but you can get a better sense of where we're headed. So that's what I'm going to focus on here, which I hope will be eye-opening as it was to me as I discover some of these truths. The thing is like this: we're trapped in the moment. You know, right now we live in the present. Yes, we remember what happened yesterday or 2 days ago, 3 days ago. But once a little time passes, we usually forget the past and we focus on our needs. It's part of survival mode, where you focus what's right now, what's here right now. Sometimes we plan for the future, sometimes we don't. But it's already been documented time and again that human nature is such that if someone were asked, if you were offered $50,000 right now or $500,000 over 10 years, most people would go for the $50,000. Because they don't know what will be in 10 years from now, and who's thinking about it. Maybe I'll be a millionaire, I won't need it, you know. And the same is with the past. Once the past passes, but one of the beautiful things about Judaism is it always understood the small picture as informed by the big picture. It never loses sight of the big picture, and it's one of the real secrets to Jewish wisdom. Because when you're able to put things in that context, you see the bird's eye view, so details become part of a larger pattern. Oh, we met you on the way, right?
Yeah, hey, you crossed.
Fine. A little warmer here. And you could just imagine yourself. If you were able to see your life, the bigger picture, the bird's eye view of your life, then all the details of today and tomorrow and yesterday and whatever will come are seen in a completely different context. An analogy I like to give for it is, imagine you're on a boat riding down a river, the river of time. Even though actually from a Jewish perspective, time is not like a river, it's more like a spiral. But for this analogy, it works. And you're on the boat. What you see on the banks, on the river bank, and everything you see in front of you is today, is the now, is the present. The tomorrow will be down the bank, down the river, which you can't see yet. Yesterday and the past is the river that you've already traveled down. So you're now here, and you only see that vantage point that you have. Now imagine a bird flying. A bird has a bird's eye view, so they see yesterday's and tomorrow. And then that bird lands on your shoulder. So right now it sees things through your eyes. But the bird also has that larger perspective. So the bird is like the soul, and you on the boat is like the body. The body lives in past, present, and future. The soul, on the other hand, was here long before our lives began upon birth or conception, and will continue on its journey even afterwards. Talk about journeys. So, though I don't want to bring up a negative, but it's a good way to capture this point, people often ask me over the years, I've always been frustrated, try to answer the question when you go Shiva call, Eloi Aleinu, no one should ever know of any tragedies or losses. And the big question a lot of people ask is, where does the soul go to? Is my mother or my father's soul at peace? Where does it go to? Can they see me? Can I hear them? Can they hear me? I can't see them, but can they see me? And you always feel like awkward almost. How do you answer this question in any realistic way? And then, I don't know, one day I got this brainstorm, and it was actually this humorous analogy that I use that is almost ridiculous, but it actually works very well in explaining this. And think of an imaginary dialogue, conversation between a refrigerator and electricity. Okay? And the refrigerator asked the electricity, where do you go to when they pull the plug? When they pull the plug of the refrigerator. And the electricity, of course, is incredulous. And it's like, chutzpah, what kind of chutzpah, what kind of nerve is that? You ask me where I go, you're a little box they just invented 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You figured out how to generate me electricity into this little container to refrigerate food. And now you think you're the center of the universe. You ask me where I go to. I was here long before you, and I'll be here long after you. This appliance will break down at some point, and it wasn't around all the time. But the appliance only sees it from its perspective. So the very question, where does the soul go to, is assuming that you're where it's at, and the soul is going somewhere. Maybe you're not where it's at. Maybe this isn't the center of the universe. It's only the center of the universe through your eyes, through your lens, through your myopic vision right this moment. But the electricity goes back to a place that's not contained by a box, by a refrigerator. So that's somewhat of a way of looking at things in the broader perspective. So to understand really where we are today, you and I, and also collectively, individually and collectively, and I'm speaking specifically to the Jewish people, but this really applies to all human beings, it's critical to understand how we got here. So yesterday I spoke about the paradox of our time, which is, on one hand, the best of times, comfort, especially in regard to religious practice, something the Jews rarely ever had in history, if at all, being able to succeed, do whatever it is without being discriminated against. I'm not denying that there is anti-Semitism, but it's not institutionalized in the way it was, where we're completely vulnerable and at mercy of the lords of our hosts. On the other hand, there's never been more apathy and more assimilation around Jewish values and Jewish tradition, to the point that many wonder where we headed. Unless there's a miracle, because the trajectory isn't very good. Even though, yes, observant Judaism has a certain staying power and it's grown, but for every Jew that goes to a synagogue, you can count 10 that don't. And for every one that becomes more observant, many are going the other direction. So we have this real paradox. I want to analyze it a bit and how we got here. And I think when you understand how we got here, it'll be a lot easier to understand where we are and what we can do about it. And hence the 21st century Jew. So, just to use a round number, let's take 400 years ago. We're now 2021, so what would be 400 years ago? 1621, the 17th century. Let's go back 500 years, we'll make it simpler. So 500 years ago, 16th century, where were most Jews? Either in Central Europe, Eastern Europe, or in the Sephardic countries. That's where they were more or less congregated. Under the Muslims, the Jews had a little easier, mostly. Under the Christians, it was much harsher. But still, everybody was subject to the lords, as I mentioned, the monarchs, the kings, the church leaders, and at their mercy. If we were lucky and we had a benevolent despot leader, so fine, so we had better times. If we weren't, it was really horrible. And what did we face? Everything. You just count through history, starting from, obviously, the Egyptian slavery, that goes back thousands of years. But you go forward, yes, we had a temple that stood for a while, but then there were the Babylonians that destroyed it, and then the Romans, the second temple, and in between were the Assyrians and the Persians and the Greeks, and then there came the Ottoman Empire and the battles between the Christian and the Muslim forces at work. We have the Crusaders, which wreaked so much havoc, and then the pogroms, Inquisition, until finally we have the Holocaust. So, essentially you can sum it up as expulsions, persecutions, discrimination in every possible way, if not outright genocide and murder. They say there's more Jewish blood in the rivers of Europe than water. Okay, horrible history. But on the other hand, here too is a paradox. The Jewish communities, because they were so isolated and had no recourse, built very strong strongholds. They had very powerful communities. The great leaders, the text, the scholarship, the books that they wrote. Everything. People like Rashi, the Rambam, the Ramban, Rajba, they lived in horrible times. If you read I always find it fascinating, if you read their texts, which are voluminous, prolific, you don't even know. There's a thing called in literature today called deconstructing literature. You could deconstruct and figure out the personality of the author and where he lived and what kind of mother he had and who abused him and so on. If you read these commentaries, honestly, I would challenge you. You would not find one indication of bitterness, of pain, of fear. Like you'd think that they were like Rashi was sitting on the beach in Charleston, South Carolina, and writing commentary like with no worries in the world, when in fact his family and the Jewish community in Worms, France, were suffering and there were pogroms and they were constantly worried. So how they had that composure and presence, maybe I'll touch upon a little later, but very clearly, and this was not an anomaly. We're talking about hundreds. You know how many books we have right now that were written in the Middle Ages? Thousands. And many that got lost and got burned, and still we have thousands of books just from that period. So on one hand, it was horrible times, the exact opposite paradox that we have today. Assimilation was basically zero. And on the other hand, Jewish scholarship and piety and commitment and so on was at the highest. Now you could say it's obviously interdependent, as I discussed yesterday. When you're prosperous and successful, you become apathetic. You don't fight for your values. They did not have that luxury, so everything was a fight, and they fought strongly and they kept their communities strong. I'm sure they had problems. Everyone's had problems, but when you have to run and worry about your wife and children, and where you're going to be running when the next pogrom comes, you don't really have time to determine whether you get depressed. Like someone told me that their Candy Crush isn't working now, so it crashed over Yom Tov. So that was not one of the worries 500 years ago. Let me put it that way. So we have. When you think about it, it's almost comical, the things that bother us. And again, I'm not minimizing people's personal challenges we have today. We have many of them. But if you think, a lot of them come due to our comforts, not due to our sufferings. As a matter of fact, comfort created more abuse and more therapy. Like why didn't our great-great-grandparents need therapy? Well, you could say maybe they did need therapy and they didn't have therapists. Or maybe they didn't need it because they had bigger issues to worry about.
But they also had rabbis.
Okay, but rabbis that you could talk to, not like rabbis today. Okay, that's also, so it's a weird paradox, but it's critical to understand. But let me say, so then what happened? What happened? Something changed. Clearly, there was a change. So you can say a good 3,000 years of our history, from the time when Jews left Egypt, fast forward, with all the challenges, there were many challenges. Remember during the time of the kings in In Tanakh, it talks about idolatry and other things. But the challenges that we're talking about now that created the modern age began approximately 400 years ago. Now, what changed? So this is common knowledge today. What changed was that, especially starting in the Western world, in Europe, the waves of what they call today free thinking began to sweep through Europe, which would give birth to democracy and to the concepts that all people are created equal, and principles of rights, of human rights. That didn't exist. 500 years ago, if you check it out, the concept of individual rights, private property even, there was no such thing. The king was right under God. The king can do whatever he wants, can confiscate and give and take whatever he liked, and that was justifiably the way that the world functioned. What changed was that this was beginning to be challenged. What some people would call it, you can call it the beginning of the Renaissance, which led to the Enlightenment. And who benefited most from a practical point of view was the Jews, because they were the most persecuted. So what happened was what we call the emancipation of the Jews. Now, it didn't happen overnight. So whatever I'm saying now didn't happen like in one day, didn't happen in 1 year. It took years. But essentially, the attitude to Jews as being the conventional and scapegoat and the go-to victims, so to speak, began to get a little laxer. Trust me, the Holocaust hadn't happened yet, so it's not exactly like it was all fine and dandy, plenty of problems. But the idea that the Jew was not able to go into Western culture and to Western universities and to Western trades, that began to change. So what happened? What was the Jewish reaction to these new openings, you can say, opportunities? So an interesting thing happened. The Jews were not used to this, because suddenly you're faced with new options. You can interact with your Protestant or mostly Protestant neighbors, and the boundaries began to melt away. And this is essentially what happened. And again, this is not overnight. It took around 100, 200 years to emerge, but it was pretty quick. What happened was what we know as the birth of the Reform movement. How did the Jewish Reform movement get born? Why was there a reform? Why suddenly was there a call for reformation? Which interestingly paralleled Christianity also went through the Reformation. Luther, Protestantism essentially was a form of reform Christianity. Well, it came from the fact that suddenly the Jewish people were exposed and opened opportunities. So the Jews were faced with a dilemma. What do you do with these opportunities? So they saw it, many of the leaders, especially in Germany and then France, the Jewish leaders, many saw it as, okay, let's have the best of both worlds. There was even an expression that went around then, a Jew at home and a guy in the street. A Jew at home and a Gentile in the street. The problem is, of course, what happens when there's a conflict? What happens if your Gentile neighbor invites you to Christmas pork dinner? Is that in the street or is that home? I mean, I'm putting it in very simple terms, but that was essentially what was going on. So people like Moses Mendelssohn, they were personally all observant Jews. And they studied Torah, and that was what they grew up with. But the light keep... Huh?
Electricity.
Oh, I thought it was light effects.
Took the plug out of the refrigerator.
Yes.
There you go. That's right. It's fine. So what happened next was Mendelssohn, however, had students. Just to use one was what does the name elude me? Will come to me in a few minutes. And they already took it to the next level. They said the Torah, as we know it, is basically outdated. And what we need to do is reform it. And they then, in turn, basically cut out all the laws that they considered to be irrational or mythical or superstitious, laws of purity, offerings, praying to Jerusalem or Israel. And they said, we'll take the beautiful, inspirational ideas in Judaism, and that which really becomes similar to what our neighbors the Christians are following, and that's what we will embrace. And this became the formalized new approach in these countries. Just to show you how far it went. And I'm not here, by the way, to criticize Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking more simply facts, observation of what evolved. When the Reform movement ultimately came to the United States, and part of it was actually Charleston was one of the first, and Cincinnati and other places. So it went to that extent that they, it was called the Pittsburgh, not Chronicles, the Pittsburgh Mandate or something.
Platform?
Pittsburgh Platform. Yeah, that's it. They came out with different new principles, and one of them was to move Shabbos from Saturday to Sunday. People don't know this. Because since we're already celebrating a Sabbath, why do we have to look different than our Protestant neighbors, our Christian neighbors? That was so radical that was never adopted. But the point I'm making here is I'm not even here to dismiss, I'm not dismissing, I'm just pointing out, think with rationally, if you have options and you can live at peace with Christians around you, why distinguish yourself? Up to that point, the Jews didn't have a choice. That was their thinking. They were thinking positively. They thought they were doing something constructive. But the problem was did not realize, or maybe they did realize, that they were tampering with the integrity of what makes something Jewish. Because of that, for that matter, you might as well become Protestant if Sunday is Shabbos and you're building synagogues that look like cathedrals, etc., etc. And you're cutting out everything that was so-called sacred to the Jews. So that was the birth of the beginning of, you can say, assimilation. But on the other extreme, and this is where it gets really ironic even, on the other extreme you had the birth of the Ultra-Orthodox movement. So in Eastern Europe, when these new waves of opportunity were traveling through Europe, the communities in Eastern Europe, they saw it as a threat. They didn't see it as an opportunity. And as a threat, they felt that they have to build walls, put up ghetto walls, self-imposed blinders, not to be influenced by the evil forces of the Western world. And there you have the birth of ultra-Orthodox extremism, which went to the opposite extreme of reform. And especially in response to the reform, they felt they have to build even more, they call gedarim, more boundaries and more laws and more stringency to make sure that this new opportunity do not contaminate and pollute our communities. So now you have these two different extremes. And I will share this with you. Interestingly, if you think about it, both of them are rooted in one major flaw. And what is that? That the modern world cannot coexist with God and with faith. So you either have to compromise your faith to so-called fit in to the modern world, or you have to escape into your own insulated and isolated communities and ghettos, not to be polluted by those forces. So they're both rooted in the same philosophical problem, that the modern world is too much. So again, you either have to compromise or you have to reject. Well, this is where an interesting thing happened. In White Russia, the same time, we're talking now the 17th century, approximately, a man was born, he would become the Baal Shem Tov, the father of the Hasidic movement. The way I like to put it is that God, before the illness, always sends a cure. There is a solution. And that is ultimately, when you think of the context, you'll see the value and appreciate what he came to contribute, and then his successors, what they continued and perpetuated. And like I shared yesterday in my own personal story, I wouldn't be here were it not for this third option. what did he teach, essentially? He taught there is no such thing as anything that's devoid of godliness. The Western world is not more powerful. We don't believe in the concept that perhaps some Christians do, that there is a original sin and evil that's more powerful or equally powerful than good. God is everywhere. Shema Yisrael, when we say Hashem Echad, doesn't just mean one God and not many gods, which is the simple interpretation, monotheism. It means one reality and not two. There's a divine everywhere. That there is no, God cannot be split, and he's indivisible, and the same God that we connect with on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies or in the synagogue is the same God right now sitting with us Thursday morning in Charleston, South Carolina. I just like how that sounds, the contrast. That God is not split. Why then is some places holier than others? Why is Yom Kippur a holier day? And why is the synagogue a holier place, or go to the kotel? Because there are parts in the world that there are less layers, so to speak, that don't let us see godliness. But from a point of view of godliness, it's everywhere. And therefore, that concept that the Western world and all its benefits has to be an enemy, and the only way to avoid it is by insulation, is incorrect. Obviously, just like when we teach our children, you don't put your children out in the street and say, go ahead, and we're stronger than everything. You need to be educated and trained and be empowered. But fundamentally, philosophically, there's no real threat. However, the condition is that you have to now reinforce and really bolster and feed your soul in ways that till now we didn't do. Because here's the interesting thing. When the Jews were in the ghettos, in the shtetls, insulated, they didn't have to face this. So in a way that you could say they were even naive to some extent and innocent, like an innocent child. And you could pick up the integrity of Judaism, Yerushalayim, faith in God, just from the smell of the chicken soup in your grandmother's kitchen on Friday or holiday. Now, there were other winds blowing. So now there's only one way to deal with it. You have to dig deeper and access deeper spiritual resources to counter these forces. That is, in essence, in my own words, is what the Baal Shem Tov taught. And that later developed into what we call today Hasidic thinking. It's a third option that rejects both other two options. There's not to say there aren't arguments to be made for them, but it teaches essentially, and I'll give you a practical example. A few years ago, if you remember, in Citi Field in New York, there was a big 100,000 people, Jewish, Orthodox Jews, got together to declare the vices of the internet. Remember that? It was all over the place. The interesting irony was that it was in Citi Field, which of course is a baseball, a sports stadium. And there were jumbotrons, and it was broadcast on the internet. So I found that to be an interesting twist. That they're using the internet to say how bad the internet is. I understand they wanted to reach people. But, and I watched it closely, because to me it was a perfect example of what we're discussing here. I didn't attend, because since it was on the internet, why did I need to attend? I could see all the proceedings, just like I don't go to a Mets game. You can watch it. And it was interesting how they all talked about the devil and the vices and the challenges and the porn and all the inappropriate stuff that the internet poses. All legitimate concerns. I have no issue with that. But the question was, what is the solution? So I'm not going to be overly cynical here. Some cynics said, when they found out who sponsored the event, were people who were selling internet filters. So that was one of the decisions, that make sure there should be a filter on your computers, on your smartphones, and so on. What bothered me really mostly, I respected all the people there, but what bothered me was I realized they're clueless. They have no answer. So I understand their outcry, because they want to just make people aware of the challenge. But I was very saddened to see that they were really basically the second argument. We just have to figure out how to reject it. But let's be honest here. You can maybe your 5-year-old child you can censor and not let them use phones and internet. But what happens if the adults are the problem? Is it possible even to be an adult today and do business without any technology? It would be like saying not to use a telephone, not to use an automobile, or not to travel anywhere. So they didn't have answers. And I wasn't surprised, but it was sad to see. Perfect example. So if you take school of thought number 1 that I mentioned, would say, you know what? Learn to live with it. Use the internet. Hey, it's got its vices, but at least you're taking part of the modern world. The second school of thought said, no, let's try to build as much as possible walls and so on, filters. But the book filter, how could you really filter it here? Right here, my phone here, you can access anything anywhere. Yes, I could put a filter, but what happens if someone doesn't want their filter? I mean, that's the same problem, So it's like, So I remember then speaking, actually, a few weeks after the event. I know a group of rabbis in Flatbush and Borough Park, Orthodox rabbis who attended, and I had mentioned to one of them on the phone, I said, so you didn't come up with any solutions, so what was exactly the point? So fine, you protested. I understand the value of a protest. She said, what do you suggest? So I said, I'm happy to make some suggestions. So he brought together around 10, 12 rabbis, pretty known rabbis. It was an off-the-record, nobody wanted it to be advertised, off-the-record conversation one evening in one of the homes in Flatbush. And I said, and I shared with them this thought I just shared with you about the 3 approaches. And I said, look, I come from the world of Hasidus. I do know that there's a 3rd approach. And they said, so how do you implement that? So I said, I'll tell you how. Life is risks. To say there's no risks, I am not here to come and tell you, guarantee that no way. As soon as your soul comes into this world, there are risks. Whoever you come from, whether you're Ultra-Orthodox or whether you're Reform or whether you're secular. What I could say, however, is this, that if we can teach our children that the best defense is offense. He's not walking out because of anything. He told me he had to go. I know. No, I want others to know that's not a protest. Sometimes people say he walked out. Yeah. I need to say it because once there was a guy who walked out of my class and everybody was so upset. They said, what did you say that offended him? I said, maybe he just had to go somewhere. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, Yeah. Oh, nice to see you. Okay, moving up. So I said to them, and they actually liked the idea. I said, so teach our children that God created this world, and He also created the internet was not created by human beings. Created the technology, the platforms, but the technology is not created by human beings. The ability to use sound waves or airwaves, whether it's television, radio, is part of nature. Part of scientific, is part of the subatomic infrastructure of existence. So we learned that everything God created in this world, He created for His honor. So the whole purpose of it all is to spread Torah, is to spread goodness and kindness. So we should teach that to our children and say, if you're going to use the phone, and that every parent has to make a decision if yes, no, but I mean, if you're going to allow them because they go to friends anyway, it's not very easy to stop a 12-year-old, But if you're going to use it for everything you do, whether game you play or every social connection, every day you need to send out 10 messages to someone, a kind message, a word of some word from the Torah, some thought, some passion, something compassionate. And I said, if we can teach that to our children, so I'm not suggesting it's going to guarantee, but at least you have a fighting chance that you are looking at technology as much as we look at the whole world as an opportunity to bring God to the people, to bring God to others, to bring light to the world. And the idea came to me actually, because I remember I went on a Shabbaton. I was going to, it was East Hampton, a weekend Shabbaton. So on my way, Friday afternoon, I'm driving. And I stopped for gas in some small town on the LIE, the Long Island Expressway. After I fill up my car, a guy comes over to me because right near the gas station there was a club, and he was like a parking attendant, a young guy, maybe 20 years old, 19. Comes over and he says, "Are you staying for the party tonight?" I'll park your car. So I said, no, I'm going to another party. He says, what kind of party? I said, it's called a Shabbat party. And he was intrigued. He asked me, what is that exactly? I told him. Then he said to me, I like you. Do you have any type of like emails you send out or anything I could check out? So I said, sure, give me your email address. Like I just took yours. and you'll see why I became like a harvester of emails. and I gave it to me. And I went my way. I did the Shabbos. I came back to New York after Shabbos, Saturday night, Sunday morning. I gave the email to my office, and they included him. He started getting these emails. I never thought I'd hear from him again. Well, how do you like this? Around 6 years later, 6 years, I'm not exaggerating, get an email from him one day. Hey, you probably don't remember me. I was the guy that you were going to this party, Shabbos party, and I was parking cars. You probably don't realize that I was Jewish, and I am. And he writes to me that he had a very tragic life. His parents were both killed in a car accident when he was very young. So he was shuffled from one house to another, to foster homes. A mess, he says. My life was a mess. I had no Jewish education, no education altogether. And I just had to rough it. And but your emails, I need you to know, these are his words. This made me cry. I'll tell you exactly what he said. He said, your emails have become my Judaism. And he starts like quoting. He says, my Rosh Hashanah, I don't go to synagogue, I read your email on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. He went through like the whole thing. He says, this is what I pray with, and this is how I speak to God. I need you to know that was the emails you send me every week. And I know them inside out. I read them every week, and it's like my Bible. It means he had more words. It was very, very touching. And we stayed in touch, and I said to myself, what are the chances that he would have, let's say if I had met him and there was no internet and no email, what are the chances he'd come to New York to a class I give in Manhattan? Most likely not. And here, maybe this is why God created it. I mentioned yesterday that sometimes, well, not sometimes, that brook of water was waiting for the beginning of time for you to come and make a blessing on it. That the whole world is waiting for you to come here in Charleston and do something good. And not just for yourself, for others. And I really saw that. And after that, I remember saying to myself, what does it take? It doesn't cost anything. You press one button, and the email goes to 1,000 people, it goes to 100,000 people. And such an easy thing to do. So after that, I became like obsessed with it. Besides just collecting emails, because I never know who you're going to reach and when and what. I started telling people, you want to know how to use the internet? That's what you use it for. Every day, you all have a sphere of influence. You all have people you communicate with for whatever reason. So maybe just send out every day a nice thought. You don't even have to create the thought. Something that you read that you like, or something that you do right. I mean, the ease is so simple. It's just the press of a button. So to me, this is a perfect example of that third approach that I mentioned from the Baal Shem Tov Hasidic approach to the modern world. So it really comes down to this. Many Jews today who are observant, let's talk about observant Jews, feel they need to compartmentalize between their work and their Judaism. So yes, they work hard, and they make money, and they'll give tzedakah and charity to their synagogue, to a school, to a good deed, to needy people, to a good cause, and so on. But there is a compartmentalization. It's almost, I don't want to say the words, a Jew at home and a guy in the street, because it's not necessarily to that extent. They will keep Shabbos and they will eat kosher. But there is a subtle form of compartmentalization. Then there's, of course, many Jews who are following that first approach that really have, most cases, have become really like non-Jews in behavior. And they have perhaps some Jewish traditions remaining, if at all. And then you have a larger number that drop the whole thing. I'm convinced, I have no doubt, that the challenges we have today, what I began speaking about before, the paradox of the best of time and the most challenging of times, can be resolved. But it requires a change of mindset and heart set among all of us. First of all, it's coming to understand that Judaism and Torah has a message to everybody. whether you're secular, one is secular or not secular, has a message, a universal message to every aspect of your life. Your marriage, your relationships, your work, not just how to eat matzah and keep and Passover. That's the Jewish, that's the Torah part, that's the mitzvahs part. But the rest of your life is also part of the plan. We need to be educated about that in that way. And then we need to implement it. We need to see every opportunity that comes our way and see it literally like a businessman. You know, a good person who owns a business, wherever they go, they're always looking for opportunities. We as Jews have a responsibility. We're like ambassadors that God chose to bring godliness to the world. I often talk to very, very Haredish groups, and I say this to them, and they're like, the one guy who really tells me, what am I supposed to say? You tell me I'm sitting on an airplane, you're sitting near someone, and you get into a conversation. I have nothing I can talk to them about except our business relations. Like, I sell online, and maybe he's a supplier, so we create maybe a relationship. That's the best I can do. I said, you can't talk to him anything about like God or values or family and so on. He says, I don't know what to say. I can only speak that language to my own community. That's sad. That means that Jews are not taught how to have a communication to someone not like yourself, whether Jew or non-Jew, except whether it's purely business or money or some other superficial thing. And when it comes to spiritual values, the only ones you can talk to the people that go to your same shul as you do. You tell me what that sounds like. Now, I'm not criticizing. It's because they don't know better. Because the split that I talked about earlier, 300-400 years ago, is still very active today. There's still many who feel compartmentalization is the only way to go. The question is, which way do you go? Do you have that, do you so-called compromise? Or do you isolate yourself? Or there's a new form of compartmentalization. You can have someone completely dressed like a Hasidic Jew, and they do great business. Look at B&H, for example, or others. And they're very successful, and they're very big Kiddush Hashem. They're closed on Shabbos, online as well. But they don't know how to communicate to the secular world. I know the owner, that's why I'm saying this. He doesn't know how to communicate to the secular world unless he works. And he's ethical, he's an ethical person, so he makes a big Kiddush Hashem in his business relationships. I don't know if you know this, they're one of the biggest advertisers in photography magazines. They don't let their ads go into a magazine that has anything not tzniazdik, which is like unheard of, because the photography magazines is all non-tzniazdik. It's all pictures of women and not necessarily clad in the most modest way. But they won't put their ads, and their cloud, their advertising budget is so big that photography magazines go along because they want their business. How do you like that? So I find that to be very touching. But at the same time, that's more they're imposing because they have the clout to do so. It's not because they educated them that tznius is the right way to go. It's just they want their money. I'm not taking away from they're entitled to expect their standards. I'm going obviously a bit deeper here. So when I hear the word 21st century Jew, I don't just see it as, okay, the Jew, how do we bridge faith and modernity? Of course, that's critical. But it's much more than that. How do we integrate? How do we dig deeper and find those spiritual resources and be able to communicate to anyone in this world, secular or religious, to show how you can fuse God and the universe? That to me is like the operative challenge. And I can tell you, I speak also very personally here. This is my work. This is what I'm dedicated to. This is what I do 24/7, literally. I say 7 because even on Shabbos I think about it, and it's what I do because I really feel this is the biggest challenge today. And I'll tell you how I do it. I'll tell you some of the little secrets here. I find psychology is a very good bridge. Why? Because psychology everybody's into anyway. It's not threatening. It's not like saying, you have to assume there's a God and then you have to assume all the mitzvahs and all that. So psychology is a very good bridge because psychology, you know what psychology means? The words, it means study of the soul. It's from Latin or Greek. Psych is soul and logy is study of. So study of the soul. I find that to be a very powerful way because people want to improve their marriages, their relationship with their children, dealing with their own inner fears and insecurities and We all have our traumas, childhood traumas, or whatever traumas we've experienced. So to me, it's a very non-threatening way where you can create a bridge between the two. So I do a lot of work is how to bridge universal ideas from Torah into language, into psychological language. That's one bridge. Another bridge that really is very powerful is music, interestingly. Because music, everybody loves music. Music, there's like almost no one has defenses to music. If you say the word, listen, we're going to a Pesach program, some people, I don't know what that is. And I'm not talking about ourselves here, we're here. But I say, you want to hear beautiful music? Oh, that's sure. Music also is the language of the soul. It touches us. So I find that to be another excellent way to bridge, so-called, these worlds. So I see myself as a bridge, and I think all of you are a bridge. I think every one of us is a bridge because that's why you're here. So in addition to our obligations and beautiful responsibilities with our home and our family, everyone has to find their way of bringing some form of godliness, or you can use any word you like, and to infuse it into your work or to your relationships, or as I mentioned before, even technology. I don't see any reason that we, each one in our own way, cannot build and reach many people. And it's not even a numbers game, it's just whoever you can reach. And it really brings these two worlds together. But you're going to need to learn more about the soul, that I can tell you. It's going to be very difficult to explain to most people the rituals. Like if someone said to you, what'd you do on Passover? Okay, I was at a program, we ate matzah, we drank wine, and we had great food too, and all the other amenities we have here. So why do you eat matzah? So most Jews who are observant will say to themselves, this person can't understand, I'm not going to even try to explain to them. It's a ritual, just like you Christians use a wafer, we use a matzah. Actually it's taken from there, that concept. So somewhat of a distortion of the Last Supper was a Seder meal. Right. So Yoshka, Jesus was his flesh and blood, so they took that as wine and matzah. But let's not go there. That's not really relevant here. But many Jews will say, "Hey, I can't explain this to someone who didn't grow up with it." So the most we can say, it's one of our rituals. Now, honestly, that bothers me a lot when people say that, because what does that really tell another person? Okay, you got yourself your primitive rituals. We have our primitive rituals. There's no deeper message. It's almost like as growing up, even though I grew up from home and all that. It bothered me because it's like thoughtless almost. Okay, so you're doing so. Is there any reason you do this? Yeah, this is our tradition for the last thousands of years. We eat matzah because when the Jews had to leave Egypt, they had to rush out and there was no time for the bread to rise. And therefore that's the technical explanation. I remember when I was a kid, I asked my father, I said, one second, they were in Golos, they were in exile for 210 years. Suddenly they can't wait a few minutes for the bread to rise. You know what I mean? I mean, God Almighty. Finally they can have a normal meal. No, we're out of here. What do you think about that? 210 years you're in hell, and then let me have a piece of bread. No, we got to run. Anyway, I never got an answer to that one. But, when you understand the deeper meaning, it wasn't they were rushing because there was something about the rushing that was necessary to get out of this dark place and matzah. But when you explain to people, for example, that matzah is the bread of humility, and it's that antithesis of chametz, of bread, which is inflated ego. Oh, that's a very fascinating topic. I'll just give you another example. Mitzvah, the word mitzvah. How do you translate mitzvah? Everybody translates commandment, right? Okay, that's because you're an insider. Huh? Or deed. But it also comes from the word connection. You tell me, commandment, who wants to be commanded? Connection, everybody wants to be connected. We like networking, connected with our phones, connected through people, connections. So there's so many ideas in Judaism, it's sometimes language that can be prohibitive and even distancing. And if you know how to explain it properly, it changes everything. Then you become not just a thoughtful person. Someone says to you, wow, your religion or your traditions really are like a healthy way of living. Which to me, that is the biggest Kiddush Hashem of all. Why? Because you're saying that Judaism isn't just a bunch of rituals and everybody's got their rituals. It's actually the healthiest and most wholesome and most spiritually fulfilling way of living. And its messages are universal. Now, obviously, I'm not distinguishing between Jew and non, and I'm not suggesting there isn't a distinction between Jews and non-Jews, but that's another discussion. But still, there's many universal elements that connect us, and to me, it comes down to what I said in my talk the second day. I think it was about synagogue, about post-synagogue Judaism. That at the end of the day, the most beautiful part of Yiddishkeit is that it actually is life transforming. And when you learn it, it's not just a bunch of rituals. It's about learning how to soar, how to fly, how to reach transcendent states and bring it down to this world. And as such, whether a person is observant or not observant, it has indispensable value. And I would add one more thing, that even for the most observant Jew, who's living a good life and all that, nevertheless, the challenges that we and our children will face, the more you can infuse spiritual meaning and passion to Yiddishkeit, the more likely that child will maintain and perpetuate it, not just out of obligation or guilt or superstition or fear, but out of really saying, wow, this is the best way for me to live my life. That's what we really want. So that's my take on the 21st century Jew, but since we have a little time, if anybody, what's the story? We told them, yeah, we're fine. Another 10 minutes. Huh? We told them 12? What time is it now? Okay, if anybody wants to ask anything, and then I'll say some concluding remarks. Yes, sir.
Yeah, first, it's very interesting, everything you spoke about. It provokes you to think.
That's good.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention is the part you spoke about the internet and the threat of the internet to whether it's a Hasidic community or right-wing community. Yeah, that is an issue. But I think the way people look at things, and I'll use an analogy too, we have in our own, we look at objects, we're too focused on phenomena and objects and not ourselves. If we think the internet is a risk, and I'll tell you where I'm going. Take a knife. Use a knife. You could take a knife, and you could either use it to murder somebody, right? Or you could take the knife and do a mitzvah with it. You could chali, you could make a brit milah. So the question is, are we focused on the object, or are we focused on our own functionality and our attitude towards the world and stuff?
It's a great example. As a matter of fact, I use that example in my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, just for the record.
What, a knife or something?
Yeah, exactly. But the same is exactly right. You could use technology to destroy the world. You could use this technology to build the world. Absolutely. And you can be a smart person and be very devious and manipulative. You could be a smart person that helps. Yeah.
And if you're delivering, like you say, if you're delivering Divrei Torah over the internet and people are getting access to it, what's wrong with that? I mean, it's like
beautiful.
Yeah.
But there is a fear. There's that fear. I remember the first time they started teaching Torah on the radio, which was long 1960-ish. So people said, okay, so in this channel you hear Torah, the next channel you hear the Galach, the Sunday sermon in church, or in the third channel you hear something very sexual. But so there's actually, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to just say, there's an actual a medrash that addresses this, and a Talmud. It says that everything created in this world was created for God, for God's glory, but we were given free will. It says even gold was created only to be able to build a temple, a holy temple. But there was choice, and therefore they could use it to build a golden calf. So then, interesting. So one of the Roman philosophers asked Rabbi Akiva, if God didn't want idolatry, sun worshippers and moon worshippers, why didn't he destroy the sun and the moon? So Rabbi Akiva answers, I'll say it in Hebrew because it's very beautifully stated. He says, "V'chi mipnei hashotim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ya'abed es elamai." Due to the fools, God's going to destroy his own world, because there's some fools who misunderstand the purpose of the sun and the moon. So the Tosfos Yontif, a very famous commentary in the Mishnah, he asks a follow-up question. So why didn't the philosopher ask, why doesn't God destroy the fools? That would solve the problem. So he says he can't do that, because people have to have free will.
Choice.
Yeah, they have to have choice. As I think Isaac Bashevis Singer said, we must believe in free will, we have no choice. you know? Okay, however you understand. But anyway, the point is exactly right. So,
You know, the other point you bring out, maybe this is a larger issue, but I was thinking as you were speaking, we have a tremendous system of ethics, Jewish ethics. And my curiosity is, you know, the Christian world runs around missionizing, telling people, become Christian, everybody, you know, be a Christian, be a Christian. And they export their theology all over. But we sort of, like, we don't do that. Okay, but if we don't do that, we're the ones we were here before the Christians.
But our role isn't to missionize.
Not to missionize.
But to be a light to the goyim.
Okay, but how do you do that? We have our system of ethics came before the Christians. And they probably inherited a lot from what we do.
of course.
I say one of the ways to
So what are you suggesting?
combat anti-Semitism is to let people know who we are, what we are. Here, you see the system of ethics that goes on?
That's exactly what you're saying. I totally agree. We all agree. Look, we don't believe in converting people into Judaism. We have no problem of teaching these ethics to all people in the world.
No, he's just making a stand against the ghetto, against separating ourselves.
Well, I totally agree. First of all, there is no ghetto anymore. Once you have this, there's no ghetto. I don't care where. You can live in New Square, you can live in Monroe, you can live in Kiryat Yo. It doesn't make a difference. You can live in Geula. There's no ghetto anymore. That's ridiculous. Anybody thinks they can put. It's no longer physical walls. You take this. Any garbage, any inappropriate content is a button away. That's one of the challenge. Some people see it as a disaster, and it has deep challenges. But the only solution from a Jewish point of view was always dig deeper, and you need to become more connected, and then spread that. It's the only way to do it. You can't play defense your whole life.
Right.
It's impossible.
That's the thing. We do.
Not today.
I think historically we do in a way because we feel
Absolutely.
persecuted or we're victims of.
Well, because the Jews still have, because we still have that mentality that they're out to get us.
Right.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And even if there's no anti-Semitic out to get us, technology, the whole secular world. That's why I gave this talk. It's exactly meant to counter that approach. There has to be a change. You know, I've spoken about this more than once, but people who hear it, what I said is radical, even though I don't find it radical, but it's radical based on what the general paradigm of Jewish life is today. The Frum world does not. The Frum world sees themselves mostly, and God bless them all. Some of my best friends are Frum Jews, so I'm not anti-Semitic. You know, the Frum world sees themselves, many, as protecting their own. We have to protect our families, our communities, and I don't want to say the hell with everybody else, but more or less, we'll make money with them and we'll do things, but we need to protect ourselves because no one else is going to do that. Now, I understand the need for self-preservation and survival, but I totally agree that we were sent to this world for more than just protecting ourselves. We have to be a light, and we were unable to be a light like that 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago. The Jewish world would not have accepted it. Even though Christianity it's totally Judaism, just diluted, and so Judaism in its own way did its thing. It Jewishized the world in many ways. And what do you think Islam? Islam is even closer to Judaism than Christianity is. Islam is like true monotheism, according to the Rambam and many. Catholicism or Christianity or Catholicism, the Trinity, Shittuf, and stuff like that. But the principles, for sure.
Daven in a mosque.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't necessarily go there, but if that's what the Maimonides came to defend the Jews when they had to do that, right?
Do you see Rav Hirsch as like another third option outside of Hasidut, or simply as a reaction to all of the...
I think Rav Hirsch was a third option, but under the circumstances where he had to deal with, because he was right in the line of fire.
Yeah.
He was right. He wanted to demonstrate that you do not need to dilute Judaism to be a well-developed thinking person. So his approach does have a certain, even though it wasn't Hasidus, it was still that approach of making Judaism very universal and very relevant. The question you could ask is today, now that that thread doesn't exist, whether Rav Hirsch's approach worked completely. That's debatable. Not the ideas. His ideas are beautiful and so on. but should that be an approach? I mean, why you and some of the modern Orthodox Torah Derech Eretz feel they're going with that approach, but it's not really Rav Hirsch exactly. You know, the approach of having being both a scientist and a Torah person. Torah Mada, right, type of thing. There's elements to it. The difference in Chassidus and that, Chassidus would see it more like that the whole Mada, the science, is not an equal to Torah. It's part of it, and also a means to connect to God. Whereas science, not to reject science, I'm not rejecting, but there are nuances and some more overt differences. But
it is interesting how he was so focused on language and how in the modern academy, the deconstruction of language is a total obsession.
Yeah. No, but I mean, his commentaries and his ideas are brilliant. They're excellent and they're very useful, especially when you want to explain the rational side of mitzvahs and the rationale of. And he does follow somewhat the Maimonidean thinking, where Maimonides says that everything, even the things that are so-called super-rational, have rational explanation.
I think there's another challenge going on today, going forward, that we're not talking about, or
Right.
should be, and that is the definition of the core family today has dramatically changed. And what constitutes a core family? For example, we all know or relate to there's a mother, there's a father, there's children, and that's it. Now today, you have divorce, you have same-sex marriages, you have artificial insemination, you have all these different things, some attributed to modernity, and some, just social evolution, or whatever you want to call it. How should Judaism deal with the redefining of what constitutes a core family today? You have hybrid families, second marriages, third marriages, his kids, my kids.
Yeah, very good.
You didn't have this 100 years ago. What?
Blended families.
Blended families, okay.
Someone just told me that in California they're suggesting a bill to make it illegal to have a boys and girls section in clothing stores. How do you like that? New development.
For California.
It's a very good question you're asking, an excellent question, which I have not seen addressed thoroughly by by people who are proper authorities. First of all, I would divide here and conquer. I wouldn't just throw it all into one pot. Let's say gay same-sex relationship is not necessarily the same as a second marriage. So I think you have to distinguish between the elements here.
Redefine what's a family.
No, I agree with you that all these factors are affecting. But I would not just have one sweeping answer for all of them, because at the end of the day, as much as what I spoke about, that integration and bringing God into the picture, there's some things that are lines that you don't cross. The same-sex issue is a very critical one, because there are many Orthodox Jews who call themselves Orthodox who claim to be homosexual.
And transgender now.
And even transgender, not best. Okay, great.
Our Rebbe, Rabbi Weinberger, is addressing that very, very well. He's a lot of congregants that he has to deal with.
Okay. So that's a whole story of its own. But I am a firm believer in everything I said before, and that is there's an answer for everything. Whether people are ready to hear the answer is another story. When people are emotionally entangled in relationships and so on, their emotions get in the way. But our role is that we need to bring the questions to the table and really help look deeper into Torah and find the right approach to these things. There's no question in my mind that that's our objective now, to be able to deal with these different challenges. I mean, talk about, for example, even the options today for infertility. Some things are allowed according to Torah, some are not allowed. There's debates about that as well. I'm just throwing out. That's why it's complex. I can't really address it. You can't. I would do it case by case, to be honest. The only real way to go about it.
I'm not sure.
I deal with this pretty, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want to call it, quite common. I've met young women who live together. They light candles and they keep Shabbos and they're frum, but they're lesbians, and that's that. Okay, so you could say halachically that may be less of a problem, But what about spiritually? And is it the spirit of Judaism? And where's it going to go? So they can both say that they can get pregnant, and find ways. More complicated for two gay men, etc., etc. So, my approach in general, I'm not a fire and brimstone guy that just starts yelling at people that they're transgressing. And as well as the fact that I also know that there are many people who are heterosexuals that are also transgressing in also other ways. So to me, it's not like homophobia here, and that and people sleeping around and being infidelity and all that, that's like better, So I'm not like going to, even though more people are disturbed by gay issues than about heterosexual dysfunctionality, but that's due to their own limited way of looking at things. So you have to look at things in a broader sense. What you always want to do is try to find the people you're speaking to, the individual you're speaking to, what will work best for them to grow and how they can listen or not listen to it. The gay issue is a very big one because there's also a very strong movement, political homosexual movement, to legitimize it, even when it's not necessarily so legitimate. And that's even what I just said now is politically incorrect. You can get blacklisted just for saying what I just said. But I will say this. I think that there's a sexual crisis in general, homosexual or heterosexual, sexual identity, intimacy. I think even in frum homes, if you're lucky and you grow up in a very healthy, loving family, great. If you're not, you're going to have very distorted views on love and relationships. And there's not enough being done to address all that. So most of our kids going to school are learning it from the street or by default or from their friends. And again, if you're blessed and you have a healthy home and healthy environment, that gives you a fighting chance. But if that's lacking, a lot of problems. And they begin very early. And by the time you're ready at age 20 years old, not that simple to just go ahead and just rewire the whole thing, And it's difficult to have these conversations in many ways and so on. Even issues like divorce. Let's talk about divorce for a moment. How many divorces do you think are really legitimate, and how many could have been prevented if done the right thing? People just want to get out because they're, whatever reason, they have something that's distracting them So we all know that Torah allows for divorce. That means it's a legitimate vehicle, an instrument. But it's last resort. And this is a big dilemma as well, a very big dilemma. Divorce has gone up big time. People see it as pretty much a viable option. And the children, people say, the children will manage. We see children of divorce, that works out. And I'm not criticizing. I'm just looking at what can you do to help people. Others say, our parents and grandparents, they stayed in bad marriages. They knew that. So is that better? I'm on the front line. I pretty much know.
So, Mike, just what you said was, do you think all these issues existed years ago? It just didn't come out, or is it a recent phenomenon, or influenced by modernity, or freedom, or free choice, or what?
I think it's a combination. I don't have a one simple answer. I would say the following: comforts and of modernity and prosperity definitely are a contributor to a lot of issues. People today feel a sense of entitlement and don't have necessarily a sense of total commitment. And the influences, listen, the fact is, if you watch television, there's not one show where you see anything sacred about a relationship. Everyone's sleeping with everyone. There's no even pretense of a relationship. A real relationship. So what kind of impact does that have on the human psyche? It has to have an impact. There's no way it doesn't have an impact. And then you see, there's no question. There's a lot of modernity is what I spoke about earlier, is definitely exacerbating the problems. I don't see it per se that if we took our great grandparents and put them in the 21st century, would they be better than we? Not necessarily. Maybe faced with the same challenges, they'd be exactly like us. I don't necessarily say they were more Yiras Shamayim, because you could have, as I said, they didn't have options. When you don't have options, and generally speaking, you're a better person. More options create more challenges. Let's be honest, that's how it is.
You know, is this open? I don't want to harm
Well, no, it's very open. I'll just give you an example. Just let's take our great-grandfather or your great-grandmother, any one of us. Let's say one of them is chopping wood all day just to bring a little money for Shabbos and for education. The wife is toiling at home, taking care of the children and all the issues. Just a scenario. They don't ever travel. There's no television. There's no internet. There are no other options. This is their life. What's the center of their life? Shabbos, Yom Tov, Chinuch, educating their children, making sure their children survive, fighting the enemies that may come attack. That's their life. Just if you put yourself, live like that for a day, you'll go crazy. Yeah. So when you think, so it doesn't even matter what level of spirituality they were at, because they really didn't have a choice.
Right.
Put them into our day and age, you know what? They'd probably be something like us. So I think the environment was conducive for faith and Yiras Shamayim. It was like set up for that. Obviously, I'm sure that some people were wilder spirits and they wandered off and they did things that weren't appropriate. I'm sure everyone had a Yetzer Hara. But the Yetzer Hara didn't have that many options. It's like, they didn't even go to a restaurant. Can you imagine that? Okay. Actually, you know what? They lived like we did under the severest COVID circumstances. Alone, with your spouse at home, you can't even see your children. Okay. So I'm saying, just think of that. It's so different than our lives. That alone will tell you so much.
A lot of that is attributed to,
And honestly, I think if you took people here in our lives today and put them a few hundred years ago, they'd be maybe some of the most refined people ever, because then your natural self comes out. There's no doubt that our modern world creates many, many of our challenges, but that's why as Jews, we've always been resilient, and we have to figure out what to do about it. That's why I gave this talk today. Exactly. We have challenges that our grandparents and great-parents never will have had. There's no question. And when the annals of history will be written, our grandchildren will look, Mashiach will come, our grandchildren will look back and say, how did we do? Did we do the best? Or did we, what's the word? We not surrendered. How do we say? We capitulated. Or worse, we betrayed ourselves and betrayed our mission. I don't want to be a betrayer, that's for sure. Our grandparents paid too many prices for the challenges they had for us to be able to say that with our comforts we messed up. We have no excuse. Let's put it that way. I feel I don't have. Those that don't know better, maybe their excuses they didn't know. But those that do know, we have a real response. Everything we spoke about here, I'm not saying how each of you take it. You're obligated to talk about it to the people that you know. You have to. In your own way. I'm not saying you don't have to repeat what I said. But this is like the most important thing to know today. What is your role in this world? What is your role in your family? What is your role? I can't see how any responsible person would not have conversations like this. What is our role, responsibility? How do we deal with the challenges? And I'm sure everybody has here their own challenges in family, and I'm sure someone will come to you with a question or two about these topics. How will you address it? And you don't want to say, I don't know. Because then it's like, are you part of the problem or you're part of the solution? I came here this Pesach to be part of the solution. And I hope you all are the same way. That's my concluding statement. How's that? And when someone says, I used to think I was indecisive, but now I'm not so sure, that type. Someone says, I'm not sure if I'm part of the problem, part of the solution. That's part of the problem. Can't be not sure. You either got to be I'm no pressure.
Do you have any reason to think that there's a crisis in halakhic leadership as we face the challenges of modernity? What is a family, how to deal with homosexuality, the problem of the Agunot, who's defined as a Jew, and especially in Israel with the time bomb that's going on demographically. We see a crisis in leadership at the highest level in terms of having the courage to make halakhic decisions that will bring us all together.
And the answer is absolutely yes. but it didn't happen today. I see a crisis in leadership since I'm a teenager. I absolutely see that because I think leadership is sometimes confused with control or power and bureaucracy.
Territorial.
Yeah, territorial, big time, right? A lot of divisiveness. I don't see that, but let's put it this way. Leadership to me is one word, visionary. Someone with a vision and the ego doesn't get in the way. Do I see many people like that? No, there aren't very many.
It's not politics.
Is it a crisis of courage or solitude?
I think it's a combination of some of what we spoke about. I think, first of all, a type of limut zchus, how would you say that? How do you say limut zchus in English? Speaking in their merit, right, judging them favorably. The Jews have, we're worn down. We're thousands of years of Golus. We had a Holocaust that was devastating. So I, in a way, have compassion. I think the lack of leadership is a result of some of that, of almost like being, like you're in a corner and you're like weak and vulnerable. And let's just try to rebuild the best we can. I think some of it has been affected by modernity and resignation. And in general, you don't have a person that's a visionary, that has the courage and vision and egolessness. It requires a unique type individual. I was drawn to, I grew up in Chabad, Hasidus, but I was ultimately, as an adult, drawn to the Rebbe because he was that person. I saw him that way. I saw that he had a vision. It's not about being popular, even if it was controversial, about being proactive, about igniting, inspiring people to find their calling. I don't find many like that. The Orthodox world in general, there's a lot of Torah, there's a lot of tzedakah, a lot of Pesach programs. Orlando, I think, is 120,000 people this year. No. Yeah, that's what they say. Costco ran out of potatoes? Okay, that's a headline. There we go. New crisis, Jewish world. Costco runs out of potatoes. Okay. No, so there's a lot of Torah, a lot of beautiful things. Torah growth. Look at Israel. Unbelievable. You go there. Now with the challenge, but when you go there, it's like you go there, the Jewish country, such unbelievable. But if you talk about spiritual vision and guidance when it comes to what we're talking about, it's very weak. So I think there's a lot of beautiful things, but there isn't that thing that has to really ignite a generation's passion toward feeling that, most people's passion, to be honest, goes toward anti-Semitism. Meaning, let's fight anti-Semitism. So if your son or daughter asks you, so all we stand for is anti-something? Is there anything we stand for, or only what we don't stand for? So there's a crisis, there's no question. I don't like to make a statement there's a crisis because I don't like to speak in a depressing way. I really believe that it's going to be grassroots today. I don't think it's going to come from the top down. I think it's going to come from the bottom up. It's going to be you and I and people. There was a reason I did not become a pulpit rabbi, because I felt the only way to really make difference is from the bottom up. I'm an author, I'm a writer, I speak.
The individual.
I didn't want to get involved in the bureaucracy and politics of of organized religion and stuff like that. But and I think your children, don't underestimate your children. Your children can be revolutionaries. Even if you've thrown in the towel and you feel you're already old, which you're not. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, I see you're fighting that temptation. Good. But still, our children are our future. And I really think that we can do, that's where I put a lot of energy into young people, in my opinion, because you get them going and they're masters of technology. And if you get them in the right place, you get them ignited, they can change the world. Of no question in my mind. Because they will defy the status quo. The older you are, the less you challenge the status quo, even if you're a great person. So I really think that's a big place to put a lot of effort. Teaching our children to be leaders, to be, giving them the confidence that you have something unique to contribute and go for it, instead of just treading water and playing safe.
If I may ask you, maybe it's a personal question, you can tell me, but you're a therapist, correct?
I am also that.
You see people.
Yes.
So, do you ever see people that come to you for help or therapy that, in your mind, you believe what they really need is coaching, not therapy?
Yeah, actually, I see myself more as a coach than a therapist, to be honest. But I agree with you. If I see someone that needs real serious therapy, I usually send them to someone else. But I try to find out what the issue is and try to refer them. We have to determine what's the difference between therapy and coaching also. What is the difference? What do you mean by that?
Therapist goes back.
But not all, but there are behavioral therapists. No, not all therapists go back. No, not
As
all.
opposed to coaching, which should go forward.
Okay, no, that's, but
Coaching doesn't go back.
I hear what you're saying, but not all therapists are doing what you're saying.
Modalities.
Yeah, exactly. There are different types of therapists. I only go back or suggest going if there's no alternative. But there's no reason to go back unless it's like going to surgery. If you don't need to, there are many ways to go about things without necessarily digging and waking up someone's inner child and all their traumas. But sometimes it's really case by case. I totally agree. Look, from my point of view, let's not use the word coaching or therapy. It's about helping someone get rid of their obstacles and blocks and access their strengths. And figuring out what will it take to do that. Because you really want to help someone help themselves. You don't want them to be addicted to you the rest of their lives. You want them to find their tools and their community and support system. Look, the reason 12-step programs are so successful because it's peer-to-peer. There's a certain power to that. It's not even analysis. It's more the strength that you get when you see others like yourself. You realize you get rid of your shame, things like that are very vital in this whole process.
And by the way, today's modality, even in trauma work, is all about the present. And even if you have a trauma from the past that is getting triggered in the present, you feel the present somatically or in the present.
You still have old school, but it depends.
But the idea here is not to dig and stay.
Right. I got it. Yeah, I agree. I will tell you something else. Each of you should be a coach in your own way, because you have people you know, and then maybe someone that trusts you. I'm not saying you have to be a certified in that sense, but sometimes it's a kind word. Sometimes it's just showing care. Sometimes it's just telling someone good morning. You never know how you can change a life. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Scott.